there is a growing sense that Marcus Rashford and Man United might actually benefit from him being sold. So both the player and the club may benefit from him being sold, him being moved on. And then players like Nkunku linked to the club again, big connections with Mr. With Ralph Ragnick and everything else. I wanted to get your take first on Rashford leaving, because this story kind of, Fabrizio kind of first put it out there and he's considering his future. That was then tempered with, nah, he's kind of concentrating. But the story of Rashford leaving doesn't seem to want to go away.
Yeah, I think Ten Hag is going to need some sort of, we've spoken about this before, some sort of sacrificial lamb type, somebody that's a big personality, a long-standing member of the team that they end up getting rid of to set the tone that anybody can go, to kind of eliminate that feeling of player power and, I'll outlast the manager and all this nonsense, that goes around if players don't love the manager, or they feel like they're bigger than the manager, they'll just try to outlast them and make their time horrible. And so I think sometimes a manager coming in, especially if it's a split locker room on that manager, needs to put their foot down and show like anybody can go. And Rashford to me would be maybe a candidate for that. And as long as the form that he's just ended the season on has just been something I've never seen before. Somebody that, seasons gone past was one of the most dangerous attackers in the league to just a shell of their former selves. It's hard to watch, but at the same time, he's coming into his prime and he may need a change of scenery. I'm a big advocate of players leaving their comfort zone to find joy somewhere else, because sometimes it's just, you come to the end of the road. But equally, I do think that a player like Rashford could be really good under Erik ten Hag and maybe just needs a change in manager and a really good coach, somebody that can coach him to the level that a lot of Man United fans thought that he would be at this point in his career. So I'm split on this one, where I do think that there needs to be some sort of sacrifice, but I also think that Rashford is the type of player that could just need a better coach, somebody that just puts their arm around him and makes him a centerpiece of this rebuild. And because there's still a player there. I'm not going to sit here and say that he was always crap and all of that, because he wasn't. He's just really, really out of form. So I think it could go either way. Would I sell Rashford and bring in Nkunku for 25 million more or something like that? Or would I prefer to rehabilitate Rashford and probably get a similar level player? I don't know. I don't know. It just depends on whether or not Rashford feels like Ten Hag can get the best out of him and if Ten Hag is willing to work with him. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Could go either way.
Of course. And I think on that full report from The Telegraph and Jason Burt, it very much spoke about Maguire and Rashford are players that Ten Hag is already looking at. He's already focusing on. He's already assessing as to whether or not he can turn their careers round. I think that says that he knows they've got ability, but it's all about whether their attitude is right, mentality is correct, can they handle the pressure? And sometimes can you be recovered from a very vulnerable position professionally? And I think that's where Rashford finds himself in this situation where he just hasn't been able to handle a number of things. It's led to the form that he's in. He can't get in the team over a 62-year-old Juan Mata, who came on and actually balled out and played quite well. And I think it's absolutely right that Ragnick has put in, he says that he hasn't made a dossier and reports. I don't agree. I think there most certainly has been something along those lines. I look at it from the point of view of this needs to be a ruthless rebuild. If there's a rebuild, it needs to be ruthless. It needs to be harsh. It needs to be direct. And I think there does need to be a couple of sacrificial lambs, and almost Man United did this. It's funny, really. I watched a clip from Zlatan Ibrahimovic, an interview where he said that when he came to Man United and people said, we've got to do it the Fergie way, like Fergie did it. He kind of said, with all due respect to Fergie and what he achieved, I want to do it in a new way, our way. And I agree with Zlatan. This isn't about copying Fergie. And Fergie got rid of some stars when they were in the peak of the, forget being out of form, when they were at the peak of their powers, he moved them on. This isn't about copying him. It's about maintaining the standards. And Jurgen Klopp will do 101 things different to what Fergie did, and vice versa. But their standards and their practices are very much the same on a professional level. And I think someone like Rashford could be a perfect example, with leaks out the dressing room or kind of player PR always being more important than the team, just to say, do you know what? We're not going to try and rebuild you. We're going to move you on and sign somebody new who comes in with that. We don't have to fix the mindset. The mindset's ready to go from day one. And it may not be Rashford. It might be Maguire that we do it to. Of course, Pogba's moving on. Little things like Ten Hag coming in and saying, you know what, Pogba, before you even decide, he might not have made his mind up, we're pulling that offer off the table. We're moving on. You know, Anthony Martial's on loan. Do you know what? I don't even want to bring him back. Highly talented, but I think he needs to go elsewhere. We need a few of these moves to not unrest the other way. I think it will galvanize the dressing room. It makes people think, do you know what? We really need to buck our ideas up. Twisted Bubba here says, is Rashford unprofessional? What's your take on it? Do you think he's been unprofessional as of late?
It's so hard to say, because I think when you're looking at somebody that's unprofessional, I feel like that's more due to like how they train and how they act in the dressing room and things like that. It's hard to tell when they're playing games because it could just be really bad form. But I have to say, you can watch some of his performances and maybe think that he's not giving 110%, and maybe it's not just form. The running's not there. The body language isn't there. And a lot of people don't like reading into body language, but I feel like you have to use it. You know, you have to look at it and say like, okay, it looks different. Sorry
to interject, but you're right. People don't, but they only don't like looking at body language when it's a player they like, whose body language he's being.
It's not good. Yeah. That's what I think about. Like, I can see why some Manchester United fans are looking at his performances and saying, you know what, he's not giving 110% for the shirt. He's not playing for the badge. He's not playing for his teammates. But I can also see, if you like Rashford, you can look at that and just say, you know what, he's been treated poorly. He hasn't been coached right. And he's just out of form like the rest of the team. You know, it could go either way. If I had to guess, I think it's a little bit of both. You know, it started off as form and now is dipped into, you know what, I'm not giving 110%. And I think when you're doing that, that's unprofessional.
I agree. I think it's morphed into that with a lot of players. Do I think some of them have down tools? Yes. Do I think a lot of them have leaked information at certain times to the press? Yes. We saw Jesse Lingard, who's leaving. His brother put out a post that, you know, slamming Man United for not bringing his brother on. And it's almost like, I hold players accountable for this. And there's almost this element of, you know what, if I had a really tough day, when I worked at Barclays, I had a really tough day at work and told my brother about it, and he'd been on the internet and slagged them off, I'd be horrified. There's a professional standard to things where it's, if you want to speak to Man United about how you feel your brother's agreed, you go and speak to them, but you keep that off the table. The empowerment that so many footballers or their families now feel to continuously go on the internet and, you know, say their piece or twist the truth or their truth, as people talk about it these days, about situations is wrong. And it's almost, you know, show an air of decorum, show an air of professionalism, show an air of like just a little bit of, not even integrity. That's what I'm looking for here. A little bit of like pride in yourself, to not embarrass yourself by going public in that way. And I think that's the thing. Even if they're right, you still look. That's the thing with these things. Even when Lingard, I kind of get where Lingard's brother's coming from. I kind of get why Rashford would go out and push the PR to show, I am training hard. But it just makes you look bad. Generally in life, even when you're right, you look bad. And I've seen this on the social media scene where someone's been, I know one YouTube content creator says something about another YouTube content creator, and it's a lie or a variation of the truth. And the guy comes out and defends himself, or the girl comes out and defends themselves, and they end up looking worse for doing it, because then they're airing more dirty linen in public. And it's just like, oh, guys, it's messy. You know, keep it behind the scenes, as it were. So I kind of get that. Unprofessionals are probably it's probably right in many ways. I heard Terry Rashford's going to your dad's club. I read more Arsenal, to be fair, but there's a super chat here from Jesus Christ. who says, honest question, what makes you think the Glazers are going to change their way? Why would he change his way when the current Disneyland business model works? And look, I know you've seen some of my content this last week. I got cooked by Arsenal fans for moaning about the Ragnick getting the Austria job. And I said, well, I was annoyed. And they're like, oh, but it was only ever going to be a part-time consultant. I'm like, no, it wasn't. Because when the news first broke that he was doing it part-time 6 days a month, we were all raging. We all thought it was going to be that he was going to be called a consultant, but work pretty much full-time upstairs, because instead of giving him the permanent job, it was just a way of kind of shoehorning him into that kind of role. Then the fact we're now looks like we're not getting Paul Mitchell, which I know all rivals are happy about. As much as this rebuild, this ruthless rebuild sounds good, Jesus Christ, with the comment here, you are spot on that none of this matters unless major changes behind the scenes are made and or we change the way we operate. So getting rid of Rashford could be, and Maguire could be a great call. Some people will just like it because they don't like the ability of those players. But at the same time, what it can also be is very much a case of attitude, making a statement, setting a new precedent for how we want people to behave. If we don't stay the course on that, Jesus Christ, and I've got to refer to you as your username as opposed to what your real name is. I'm sure your name isn't Jesus Christ or whatever it may be, but we have to, because that's more important than a ruthless rebuild. That is more important than selling Rashford and buying Nkunku. And we're linked to some really talented players. Because one of the other names that was out there that I wanted to bring